I know we are the last session, and we are between you and the drinks. I wish we could have known that before, so we would have spread here some shots for you, but I'm going to try to keep it exciting. I'm Daria. I'm one of the founding partners of World Fund. I am very excited to have the honor to be interviewing Christian Kroll on stage. As we just heard, for me, one of the heroes of German and European entrepreneurial scene. Christian, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start. And I would like to start with a question. Could you please tell us more about your entrepreneurial path? Because, you know, what happened in your childhood that at some point you decided to start a company and challenge one of the biggest tech companies in the world? Like, what went there exactly? How did it come up?
Yeah, maybe, so for those of you who don't know what we're doing, we're a search engine that basically gives 100% of profits for climate projects, especially tree planting projects. And we're Europe's biggest search engine, which sounds very fancy, but we have roughly 1% market share. So, but still, yeah, we're doing a good job, I think. And what happened? Why did I decide? I think if I had known what it means to build a company like that, I might have actually reconsidered. But fortunately, I was just, when I started, or when I thought, okay, I want to do something meaningful for the climate, and I also want to do something that can really scale. So why not do a search engine that plants trees, basically? I was just stupid enough and stubborn enough,
naive
enough to actually give this a try. So this was 15 years ago. I was basically back then. We didn't have any funding or anything like that. It was just me and everybody who couldn't run away fast enough. So all of my friends, they just had to help. I called everybody to just basically help build this, and somehow it worked. And then it gradually kept growing, and now we're at a point where, yeah, we are making significant impact on the planet, positive impact.
No, absolutely. And not only you have 1% share, which sounds little, but the market is so huge, but you actually did challenge Google directly in Europe, and you won. Can you tell us more about that? And I mean, again, you're not naive anymore. How insane one has to be out of Germany to challenge Google?
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to build a search engine, there's a lot of things that you need to do, but one thing that you need if you want to be successful, you want to be available to users. So the problem is that, I don't know, most of you are probably still using Google. By the way, I could recommend an alternative search engine if you're interested. But I assume you've never set Google as your default search engine, right? It was always just on your phone. And that is, of course, a problem. Google owns Android, it owns Chrome, it owns YouTube. So basically many, many platforms. And it always puts their services as the preferred option. And this is illegal. And we basically have been working with regulators for quite some time, and then we're also contributing to the Digital Markets Act, which is Europe's new regulation for that type of scenario. And yeah, this, I think, now, if you're a European user, then in the past months, you might have seen a little screen that asks you, which search engine do you want to choose? And surprise, if people are actually asked, then many people actually pick alternatives. So this was a long fight in terms of, I mean, we didn't, not a physical fight, but it was us talking to regulators. Usually we had situations where on our side there was one person sitting, on the other side there were 50 lawyers from Google, and by the way, it's not only Google but also the other big tech companies that are doing those types of practices. And it's a lot of arguing, but fortunately we have strong and good regulation in Europe that I think is actually making a difference now, so we're very happy about that.
Yeah, and since so many of you have their phones in their hands, let's do that. Let's support European search engine champion. Take your phone. I'm looking at you. Take, the ones who are already with the phone, take the phone. What do we have to do?
type in Ecosia into whatever app store you're using, Play Store or iOS, and then you might get an advertisement from Google on top. Don't click on that. Scroll a bit further below and then install Ecosia and try it as your search engine for a while.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of seconds. I'm watching. Very good, very good. It's all about supporting each other, right? Speaking of supporting each other, in a way, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of VCs here, I'm one. There are also a lot of companies looking for VC capital and dreaming of actually having the 1% market share. And yet, you went another way again, and you have the stewardship ownership in your company. Could you elaborate what does it mean and how does it work? How do you make decisions in the company?
Yeah. So when I started the company, I basically made a promise that I will never sell the company, I will not extract any dividends, and that the purpose will always be that this is about solving the climate crisis. By the way, I studied business administration. If you think that's stupid, yes, I know that it's stupid, but this was basically the intention.
Hey, I also studied that. I don't think it's stupid.
Yeah, but people kind of, don't you understand how business works? No, I think I understand, but this for me, those were important aspects. However, it's very easy to make a promise like this when your company is very small and worth nothing. But when we kept growing and gradually accumulate like interest, but also value, basically, like I realized that it's more important that I actually also make those promises legally binding. So what we did in the end was that we gave 99.9% of the shares to an external foundation, and this foundation then now holds those shares and makes sure that we can never sell the company, can't take any profits out, and stick true to our purpose. So basically we donated our shares, but we're still
So who makes the decision?
I'm still an entrepreneur. Like I still own the responsibility. If things go wrong, I feel shit about it. If things go well, then I'm proud. And we're taking risks. We're making investments into our future. We're taking crazy bets. So we're still operating like a normal startup. It's just there is no VC that ever wants to do an exit with us because that's not possible. But still, we're trying to have the same type of startup spirit anyhow.
Yeah, and I mean it sounds great. I would always argue, if you have a chance to raise from a VC and fantastic VCs like World Fund or Norrsken or any other of our fellow investors, it's a good idea. But I mean, it does sound plausible to me. But do you have any limitations with how we talked about it briefly. I mean, if you would like, to aggressively become even the one of the 5% market share, what do you do then? Who do you speak with?
Yes, so I think, this model that we have, I think is one approach how you could do something like this, and I think it really fits to my personal values, and I think also to what we're doing as a company. There's a good fit. If we were telling people, hey, we're trying to save the world, but then, I don't know, a few years later we make an exit to one of the big tech companies, I think that wouldn't be very consistent.
To Google?
For example. So for me, that just wouldn't make sense, but that doesn't mean that I'm against that type of model. I think if you have a company that really is high risk and needs to scale, and basically the only solution is that some other company buys it at some point, then the VC model is probably the more appropriate. And I think if we want to solve the climate crisis and also other important crises that we have, then we need to be flexible in terms of the model. And Ecosia is also one of the first LPs and supporters of the World Fund, for example, because we also want to fund high-risk startups that maybe only work with that venture capital type of model. But I think founders, especially in the beginning of their journey, they also need to think if that is really the only path for them. Because I've seen companies where I feel like maybe our model would have been the better approach for you. Because you don't even want to exit, you don't even want to scale to that level. Maybe you just follow the student ownership model, and it's a better solution.
Yeah, I would actually, in addition to what I said before, of course, if you're a great founder, talk to us. Here is my co-founder, DJ, as well. But they are business models which just don't fit into the VC model. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, right? And then you have to think, okay, what could be a different alternative for us to build the product, the solution we so desperately want to build? And I think definitely alternatives like yours is one. But still, if you need another 100 million, what do you do?
We're generating a lot of revenue. I think I just need to wait a few months and then I have
Wow.
a few years actually. But still, that's like we're generating cash.
Yeah.
But indeed, like we can't just go and because especially we've seen a few new competitors now who, with this whole AI hype, they just said, hey, we can do AI as well. And suddenly they had a few 100 million on their bank accounts and now they're building great products. I'm a little bit jealous for that as well, because with a few 100 millions, we could probably even build better products than that. So it's not, I mean, yes, we can still do that. We can also spin off a startup that is a fully kind of VC funded and we just hold a share of it. That's still possible. But I don't want to sell parts of my company. It's not possible anymore and it doesn't fit for me. So there's some limitations, but also I see it in a way we're building very strong roots so that our company, our tree can grow very big. So I think it's still the right approach for us, even though it might be a bit slower than the VC model where you just raise a lot of money, go very fast. And if it doesn't work, okay, the company goes bankrupt. But if it works, you have multiple returns. Our approach is different.
It's a nice analogy. You know, in our office in Munich, we have a jar. When you say something like this, you know, we're building the roots to grow a tree of Ecosia, you would have to pay €5 for that. But speaking of trees, how many trees did you plant?
Over 215 million by now. And we didn't only plant them, but we actually make sure that they keep growing. This is a big difference. So this is surviving trees, basically.
Yeah. And yet, you know, trees are great, right? For many things, and saving carbon is one of them. But they're so slow.
Yes.
Like, you know, when the world is burning, are you wasting, you know, your time there? And could this effort go somewhere else where we can have a quicker impact?
So I think if you look at the actual cost per ton of CO2, trees are indeed like one of the highest, like very scalable but also very cheap approach to take carbon out of the atmosphere. For example, if you compare trees to direct air capture, you have with tree planting projects, you have like 10 to 20 euros per ton of CO2. With direct air capture at the moment, you're at maybe 500 euros. It's trying to go lower, but it's very expensive. And the good thing about tree planting projects is that you can already do them now. You can do them at scale, and you have a lot of positive side effects. So I think, in my opinion, trees or this type of this area is heavily underinvested, which is very unfortunate. The only thing that, because you get so many other benefits, you help the local people. We're often working in developing countries. You help fight the biodiversity crisis, which, by the way, is probably as big as the climate crisis. Then there's also, I mean, a lot of positive effects on the water, the soil quality, and all those things. So you get all of that for free. That's why I'm super excited about trees. And the best thing is a good tree planting project, when you start it, then actually the neighboring villages also start copying it. So it's not only the trees that we plant, but we often just plant hope and alternatives in the areas that we're active in. And what is even, we don't communicate about that so much, but what we're often doing with tree planting projects is that we're actually, because there's only one thing that I think is more effective than tree planting, and that is protecting forests that are already standing. And what we are doing is that with many of our tree planting projects, we're basically providing people around those forests an alternative income model so that they don't have to cut down the forest that is standing. So we're basically having a double impact with our project as well.
Interesting. And how exactly do you measure? And do you have a measurement system in place?
Yes. So we do a lot of different things. We have over 30,000 locations where we're planting trees, and we're using different technologies, including satellite pictures with biomass assessments, where we try to estimate how much CO2 we basically removed from the atmosphere. ultimately, there's also a lot of social impact that is difficult to quantify. So yes, CO2 is an important impact, but it's not the only one. We're not only going for CO2, there are many, many other things.
Yeah, and do you report it to your, how do you, what do you do with these numbers? It's like, at your, night drawer or...
Yes, so since we don't have investors, we don't have a...
Reporting.
But we actually publish an annual regeneration report, so not a sustainability report, but a regeneration report. And there we list what type of negative impact we had, because we also have sometimes some negative impact of heating our office and running our servers and so on. But then the biggest chunk is actually the positive impact that we had. And I mean, we also do a comparison. What would happen if those other big tech companies that are out there would do the same? And that is, I think, the most staggering there. If Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta would do the same as we're doing, we wouldn't have... it would be hard to find crises that we still need to solve, actually, because those would all be gone. The potential that a company like us could have at that scale is really, really impressive.
And you can download this report from your website?
Yes.
I'm full of advertising today. So if you're interested, please go to ecosia.com, because you already downloaded the app. You can then easily access to the report, right?
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. And you mentioned, and thank you for that, Ecosia and Christian were the first investor, the first LP in World Fund at scale. You also helped us a lot. And then I get this question many times, well, Ecosia is all about nature and trees and nature-based solutions, and you're like deep tech. How does it go? Isn't it a contradiction? So why would you invest in us?
Yeah. No, I think those things actually really, the reason why we also thought, hey, it would be nice if there was more investment going into climate tech solutions was that we also observed a lot of things that we just can't solve. Often what we're trying to do is, let's just pick Brazil as one of the countries. We have tree planting projects in Brazil where we're trying to reforest the Amazon, and they're great examples how this is working well. But at the same time, you have animal farming cutting down rainforest the size of a country, and there's nothing that we can really do about this because there's just this huge global demand for meat, unfortunately. And I wish people would just stop eating, especially red meat, because the climate impact of that is horrible, but I don't have the power to force them to do that, so we need to provide alternatives, and those alternatives need to be developed. So, and World Fund can do that. Like you're funding Juicy Marbles, for example, that is investing into alternative meat, or is producing alternative meat, that then reduces the demand of meat and therefore the pressure on the natural ecosystems that we are trying to protect. And there are many other examples where I think this just goes hand in hand. Nature and technology need to go hand in hand. There are a lot of people who only think about one thing, and that I think is very limiting. For example, I read Bill Gates' book. I hope he's not in the audience. He was only looking at the tech and forgot about the whole nature part, which just makes his solutions very incomplete. And sometimes even like when you look at them, almost stupid, because he forgets about the other part or doesn't know about the other part. So I think we need to solve the climate crisis, and we need to use all the tools and solutions, potential solutions that we have, and not only half of them.
Yeah. You're speaking about demand, right? And isn't in the end Ecosia also a catalyzer, like an accelerator for more consume?
Yes, this is, because we're making money by showing advertisements, and often advertisements are leading to people buying stuff that they might not even need. So this is indeed, so we filtered out a few advertisements that we think are really bad, like Temu, for example. We removed they can't advertise on Ecosia. They're also like really evil companies, oil companies, but other type of companies that are not allowed to advertise on our site. But in general, we also, we sell ads, and that's how we make money. We estimated that the positive impact that we have is much, much bigger than the negative impact that we have, because normally people would just buy stuff anyhow. But we also sometimes propose kind of maybe used products. We're also working together with one of other World Fund's other portfolio companies, Mercado, that is helping. If people really need to buy things, then better buy used products. So like doing collaborations like this. But yeah, to some extent we're dependent on our current economic system that is in parts destructive, but we're trying to have as much possible, like turn this into something positive if we can.
Yeah. Well, life is not black and white, right?
Yes.
A question to the audience. So could you please raise your hand if you're not from Barcelona? And then, thank you. Could you please raise your hand if you came by plane, if you're not from Barcelona? Yeah, so the majority looks like it. Christian, how did you come here today?
By train, yes. But yesterday, not today. That would be.
How long did it take you? I know it's a topic dear to your heart, and I think very extreme. So that's why I want to talk about it. Like, we're still flying.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I mean, for those of you who don't know, flying really is by far the most, probably the highest impact that you can have as an individual. A single flight to Indonesia, for example, is more than 2 tons of CO2 emissions. By the way, many of the flight emission calculators underreport the actual emissions. The actual emissions is around 2 tons. That is almost the entire CO2 budget that you have for the entire year. So really a lot. That's why, I mean, at my company, but also I as an individual, I have this guideline that I only fly if absolutely necessary. And coming here isn't absolutely necessary, and there are.
How long did it take you?
Yeah, it was long. I mean, I spent some days in Paris, really nice, nice city. I can recommend that. You can get from Berlin to Paris in 8 hours. You can work on the train while you're doing that. Sometimes the internet is okay. And then Barcelona is only 6 or 7 hours, I think, by train. So it's feasible. Of course, it's not comfortable, and my back hurts a little bit because it was quite long. But there is no green flying. There is no, so that's why I think this is just super important. And we need to be at least very conscious of the costs. I'm not saying that people should absolutely not fly, but be really, really conscious of it. And I judge people if they just fly for fun for a weekend, doing a shopping weekend in New York City or something like this. The next generations will, when they hear something like this, they will not be able to understand how we could have done something like this. Like, it's literally, well, I'm not gonna, but the consequences in lives in the end are mind-blowing. And that's why we need to reduce carbon emissions as much as we can. Flying by far is the number one. Stop eating meat, especially red meat, and then heating. Maybe I put on a sweater. I haven't put on my heating yet in Germany. It's quite cold, but I'm fine with so far. And not buying stuff that you don't need. Those are the 4 levers. Voting for the right parties is the 5th, but today is a bad day to talk about this.
Yeah. We will talk about this in a moment, but I think it's, I have a slightly different opinion on that topic than you, but I think it's impressive that as successful as you are, you actually live by these rules, and it did take you a couple of days to come here. You're still here, you're still talking to us, you're sharing your knowledge. I think it's amazing and diverse. A round of applause. Today is a bad day. Trump won. I think everyone kind of knew that, and still seeing these results this morning was hard, right? And I heard so many people describing what could happen and expecting like the worst to happen. And I know you're generally a positive person. Is there anything positive to expect from these results? Like, is there anything you could think about where we can, switch our minds off a little bit from this Armageddon coming?
Yeah, we earlier had a conversation where somebody was from the mental health business. I think mental health startups will have a good time now because, I'm really not looking forward to reading the news during the next 4 years. But Jokes aside, I think for European startups, climate tech startups, this might actually be like the Inflation Reduction Act was pulling a lot of companies from Europe into the US. Let's see what happens now. Some of them might want to come back because the environment here in Europe might be better again compared to the US. Overall, I still feel like for the planet, it's really bad news, and I hope something will happen that turns this into something more positive. I mean, we've seen in the Netherlands, for example, that if you let populist and incompetent people rule for a while, then people also come to the realization that it's probably not a good idea to vote for those types of people again. Maybe we just need to make a few mistakes to basically learn step by step as society, and maybe this is just one of those steps. I'm also deeply sad about the results, of course.
Yeah. Let's keep trying, and I think we do have the potential in Europe to actually use it to our advantage, but then we would need to allocate more capital.
Yes.
On all sides, private, public, to actually keep you fantastic entrepreneurs building your solutions here and be able to finance them at scale, right?
Yeah. I mean, also if you look at search engines or just digital products in general, if, let's say, Trump really, thinks that Europe isn't really the preferred partner anymore and wants to put some pressure on Europe, all you would have to do is kind of switch off some of those digital services that we all depend on. If we wouldn't have Google, just take Google. If we wouldn't have Google tomorrow anymore, there's no technology, no European technology that can replace that. I mean, even our services depend on Google, or all search engines depend on Google or Bing. There's no technology that can replace that. We would have to go back to phone books, basically. I mean, physical phone books. I think there's nothing else that we have. We as Europe need to be smarter, I think, to really invest into technologies that are essentially really important for a functioning society. And of course, no US or Chinese company would think that it's okay to install a European search engine or no government would think that it's okay to install a European search engine on their computers. They see that as strategically important and act accordingly. We in Europe also see those things as strategically important, but don't really act on it. Yeah. We try to regulate a few things, but you also need to put in some money. So I hope that we have the willingness to actually really develop and become, I think, a lighthouse for an open society. Now with the US being gone for another 4 years at least, we as Europe have the responsibility to see that, to show that open societies can work.
Yeah. Good. I see we're almost at the end. And I'm from Munich. We just had our 5th season, Oktoberfest, and after Oktoberfest it's Christmas time. So since it's Christmas time, is there this one wish, Christian, you wish for, if you could choose whatever?
I would like to have a global carbon price of 300 euros, please.
300?
300 per ton, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would solve most climate-related topics, and not only in a negative direction that you have to pay if you're doing emissions, but also in a positive direction. That if you're doing something really good for the planet, you also get rewarded. We haven't received a single cent for the 215 million trees that we've planted. So we would be a very, very wealthy company if we had. We are doing okay, but just to show that I think with the right incentives from the government, a lot of companies can thrive that do the right thing. At the moment, the companies that are destroying our planet don't have to pay for it, and the companies that are trying to fix it, they normally don't get anything for it. So that needs to change, and I think a carbon price would be a good way of doing that.
Mic drop. Thank you.
Thank you.